What happens when the universe's most inept man gets godlike powers? Twice. Jerry Smith's return to omnipotence isn't just hilarious. It's a perfect showcase of everything that makes Rick and Morty's family dynamic so compelling. As we watch Rick and Morty desperately try to contain the damage, we see the show's fundamental character relationships pushed to their breaking point. Jerry's second chance at godhood reveals new layers to his insecurity, Rick's control issues, and Morty's endless capacity for familial embarrassment. The Accidental Ascension. Rick and Morty step through a portal into the garage, both covered in some kind of purple slime, a pretty standard return from one of their interdimensional adventures. Rick's mid-sentence complaining about something Morty did when they both stopped dead in their tracks. The garage isn't a garage anymore. The concrete floor has transformed into polished marble that seems to glow from within. The walls have stretched upward into a massive dome ceiling covered in shifting constellations that don't match any known star system. And there, floating 3 feet off the ground in the center of what now looks like some kind of cosmic temple, is Jerry Smith. Jerry hovers in a meditation pose, his body radiating a soft blue light that pulses in time with what seems to be his heartbeat. Tools and ordinary garage items orbit around him like satellites, occasionally responding to his subtle hand movements, even though his eyes are closed. Jerry doesn't even seem to notice Rick and Morty's arrival, too absorbed in whatever cosmic experience he's having. "Oh no, not again," Morty says, dropping the alien specimen container he was holding. Rick immediately identifies the source of the transformation. Sitting on his workbench, now converted into some kind of ornate altar, is a device about the size of a toaster. It's partly mechanical, but has organic components that pulse with the same blue energy now flowing through Jerry. The device has dozens of cables connected to it, most of which lead to the various power sources Rick keeps in the garage. "That idiot activated the cosmic amplifier," Rick says, rushing over to the workbench. "I stole that from the consequentialists in Dimension J112. They're a race of cosmic entities that consider godhood the ultimate form of punishment." Morty looks confused. "Wait, why would ultimate power be a punishment?" "Because, Morty," Rick says, while frantically trying to disconnect the device. "With ultimate power comes ultimate responsibility, and there's nothing the universe hates more than giving Jerry Smith responsibility." Jerry's transformation is still in progress. We can see everyday objects responding to his thoughts, even though he's not consciously controlling them. A screwdriver reshapes itself into a small bird-like creature before returning to its original form. The temperature in the room fluctuates wildly as Jerry's emotions shift. A half-empty can of beer floats past, its contents transmuting from alcohol to something that glows like liquid starlight. "Dad, what are you doing?" Morty calls out to Jerry, but Jerry's eyes remain closed, his face a picture of serene confusion, like someone having an unexpected but not unpleasant dream. Rick attempts to shut down the device, but each time he disconnects a cable or flips a switch, the machine compensates by drawing power directly from Jerry now. It's created a feedback loop. The more Rick tries to stop it, the more the device draws from Jerry, and the more godlike Jerry becomes. "Jerry!" Rick shouts, genuinely alarmed now. "Jerry, you moron, wake up!" Jerry's eyes finally open, but they're not his normal eyes anymore. They're windows into what looks like deep space, stars and galaxies swirling where his pupils should be. "Rick," Jerry speaks, his voice somehow both his normal whiny tone and simultaneously echoing as if coming from everywhere at once. "I was just cleaning the garage like Beth asked. I moved that thing because it was gathering dust, and then it did something." Rick's frustration with Jerry is a staple of their relationship, but this takes it to a whole new level. This isn't just Jerry breaking something expensive or embarrassing the family. This is Jerry potentially altering the fabric of reality through sheer incompetence. That thing is a cosmic power amplifier, Jerry. It was designed for beings who exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It wasn't meant for humans, especially not humans like you. Jerry looks hurt, even with galaxy eyes. What's that supposed to mean? Humans like me. As Jerry's emotions shift to indignation, the garage temple responds. The marble floor cracks slightly beneath Rick, while the area under Morty becomes softer, more supportive. It's clear Jerry's powers are tied to his emotional state, which makes them even more dangerous, given Jerry's notorious emotional instability. Morty's reaction to all this starts as his typical embarrassment at his dad's mistakes, but quickly shifts to genuine concern. We see him looking from Rick to Jerry, realizing this isn't just another case of his dad bumbling through Rick's lab. Rick, what exactly happens when a human uses this thing? Morty asks, his voice cracking with worry. Rick's answer doesn't provide comfort. Best case scenario? Jerry's consciousness expands until it can't be contained in his physical form, and he becomes a disembodied entity of pure thought, forever contemplating his own inadequacy across infinite dimensions. And worst case? Morty asks. He remains Jerry, just with the power to reshape reality according to his Jerryness. Morty's eyes widen. That's definitely worse. The irony of Jerry becoming a god through cleaning isn't lost on anyone. In his attempt to be useful, to fulfill a simple household duty, he's accidentally ascended to a plane of existence beyond human comprehension. It's Jerry Smith in a nutshell, trying to do something mundane and somehow causing cosmic chaos. Rick makes one final attempt to shut down the amplifier, attaching a device from his coat that's supposed to siphon excess energy. Instead, Jerry unconsciously redirects the energy flow, causing Rick's device to transform into a small replica of Jerry that dances on the workbench. It's too late, Rick says, stepping back. The transformation's complete. Jerry is now a god. Again. Jerry fully transforms before their eyes. The blue energy surrounding him intensifies, his clothes shifting into flowing robes that seem to be made of condensed starlight. The objects orbiting him increase in number and speed. The entire garage expands impossibly, the interior growing while the exterior of the house remains the same size. Wow, Jerry says, looking at his hands as small galaxies form and dissolve in his palms. This feels different than last time. Jerry hovers above what used to be the garage floor, now floating over a reflective surface that looks like the calm surface of a cosmic ocean. His expression perfectly captures the essence of who Jerry Smith is, somehow simultaneously all-powerful and completely clueless. He has the power to reshape reality with a thought, but he still has no idea what he's doing. So, what now? Jerry asks, looking to Rick for guidance even as the universe bends around him. Rick puts his face in his hands. Now we deal with a god who can't figure out which way to screw in a light bulb. The universe is so screwed. Omnipotence for Dummies. The Smith family stands in a circle around Jerry in what used to be their living room, but now resembles some kind of cosmic temple crossed with a suburban home. Jerry floats a few inches off the ground, his entire body glowing with blue energy that occasionally shoots off in little arcs of lightning. The furniture around him has started to take on strange properties. The couch cushions hovering slightly, the coffee table sprouting tiny crystal formations. "Okay, everyone, don't panic," Jerry says in a voice that somehow echoes despite the room's normal acoustics. "I just need to figure out how these powers work, and then I'll turn everything back to normal." Jerry focuses his attention on a remote control sitting on the coffee table. He squints at it, and the remote begins to shake. He's clearly trying to make it float toward him, but instead, The remote transforms into a miniature version of himself that starts dancing and singing the jingle from his favorite breakfast cereal commercial. "That's not what I was trying to do," Jerry says, looking genuinely confused. Rick stands near the doorway, taking measurements with some kind of scanner. "Each time you use your powers, the energy signature gets stronger. You're creating feedback loops in the quantum field." Jerry doesn't seem to hear Rick. He's too focused on trying to fix his mistake with the remote. He waves his hand, and the mini Jerry remote suddenly freezes, then transforms into a snow globe containing a tiny winter scene of the Smith family building a snowman. But the snowman in the globe starts moving on its own, waving at them. "I think I'm getting better at this," Jerry says, with a smile that quickly fades when the snow globe begins to grow, doubling in size every few seconds. Morty jumps forward and grabs the snow globe before it gets too big, but now it's stuck to his hands. "Dad, you need to be more careful." Summer records everything on her phone. "This is going on my story. No one at school is going to believe this." Jerry tries to concentrate again, this time on a simple houseplant in the corner. He makes a gentle gesture, like he's carefully molding clay. The plant starts to grow and change, its leaves taking on a metallic sheen before the whole thing transforms into a small chrome toaster that falls to the floor with a clunk. "A toaster!" "I was trying to make it bloom," Jerry says. The toaster suddenly springs to life, popping up its lever like it's raising a hand. "Why am I here?" the toaster asks in a surprisingly deep, philosophical voice. "What is my purpose in this vast cosmos?" Beth walks in from the kitchen and stops dead in her tracks. "Is that toaster talking?" "I was trying to fix the plant," Jerry explains weakly. The toaster continues its existential crisis. "Am I merely a tool for human convenience, or do I contain within me the potential for something greater? Why toast? Why bread? Why anything at all?" The family watches in uncomfortable silence as the toaster's philosophical questions grow more profound and emotionally wrought. Tears of liquid chrome begin to form around its slots and drip onto the carpet. The fundamental emptiness of existence is overwhelming. The toaster sobs before completely melting into a puddle of reflective metal that somehow continues to whisper philosophical quotes. "Jerry, fix this right now," Beth demands, pointing at the puddle of sentient liquid metal that used to be a toaster. Jerry nods and concentrates harder than before. He makes a sweeping gesture toward the puddle. "Return to being a normal toaster." Instead of fixing just the toaster, a wave of energy pulses out from Jerry and washes over the entire house. Every appliance in view suddenly springs to life. The television grows eyes on its screen. The lamps bend their necks like curious animals. And from the kitchen comes the sound of the refrigerator singing an opera. "I made it worse," Jerry admits, shrinking back. Rick finishes a scan and looks at his device with genuine concern. "Your powers are growing exponentially. Each time you use them, you're strengthening your connection to the cosmic energy source. At this rate, you'll have enough power to reshape reality on a planetary scale within hours." The family gathers in the kitchen, keeping their distance from Jerry, who now has small planets orbiting his head like a bizarre halo. The refrigerator is performing an emotional aria about the brief lives of leftovers, while the microwave and blender appear to be engaged in a heated philosophical debate about the nature of time. "We need to understand how his powers work if we're going to contain this," Rick says, setting up more scanning equipment. "Jerry, try something simple. Just try to create a glass of water." Jerry nods and focuses. He holds out his hand, and for a moment, it seems like he might succeed. A glass begins to form, then water appears inside it. But as the family watches, the water begins to swirl in impossible patterns, changing colors and occasionally flowing upward against gravity. "I can feel it responding to how I feel," Jerry says with wonder. When I got nervous about getting it right, the water started acting weird. Summer approaches with a theory. Dad, think about something that makes you feel insecure. Jerry frowns, and immediately a transparent barrier forms around him, like a bubble of hardened air. I just thought about that time Rick called me the equivalent of a human participation trophy. Now think about something you're confident about, Morty suggests. Jerry concentrates, and for a rare moment, he smiles with genuine self-assurance. I make a really good grilled cheese sandwich. The energy around him shifts from defensive to creative. Above his outstretched hand, a perfect replica of the Earth forms. But instead of continents and oceans, it's composed entirely of precisely grilled cheese sandwiches, forming landmasses in a sea of tomato soup. Your emotional state is directly influencing your powers, Rick observes. Your insecurity creates defensive barriers, and your confidence creates whatever that cheese planet is. Jerry looks at his creation with pride, then with growing determination. Maybe I can use these powers to do something good, something that will make everyone appreciate me. Before anyone can stop him, Jerry floats up through the ceiling, phasing through it like a ghost. The family runs outside to see Jerry hovering above their house, his arms outstretched toward the neighborhood. I'm going to fix everything, Jerry announces to no one in particular. Jerry, no! Rick shouts, but it's too late. A wave of energy pulses outward from Jerry, washing over the houses on their street. At first, nothing seems to happen. Then, gradually, the houses begin to change. Front doors reshape into mouths, windows merge into eyes, and roof tiles rearrange into expressive eyebrows. The Henderson house across the street blinks its window eyes and yawns with its dormouth. Good morning, it calls out in a friendly voice. I've always wanted to tell you that your lawn ornaments are tacky. Next door, the Johnson residence develops a grumpy expression. Could you ask your children to stop cutting through my yard? It tickles. One by one, every house on the block comes alive, developing personalities that somehow reflect their owners. The family watches in horror as the entire neighborhood becomes a community of talking buildings, each one starting to communicate with its bewildered residents, who are emerging to witness the transformation. I fixed it, Jerry announces proudly, floating back down to his family. Now everyone will always know how their house feels about their decorating choices. Rick drops his scanner in defeat. You didn't fix anything, Jerry. You just made our entire neighborhood sentient. Do you have any idea how many homeowners association violations that creates? Jerry's face falls as he realizes what he's done. The houses continue their conversations, some complimenting their owners, others offering unsolicited advice about interior decorating. A few have already started to form what appears to be a neighborhood watch committee. I can fix this too, Jerry says, raising his hands again. The entire family shouts in unison, No! Rick's futile countermeasures. Rick slams the door to his underground lab and locks it with 7 different mechanisms, each one more advanced than the last. He needs to isolate himself from Jerry's chaos field. The lab's fluorescent lights flicker as Jerry's influence seeps even through the reinforced walls and specialized shielding. Rick mutters under his breath as he pulls equipment from shelves and drawers, throwing together components with the desperate speed of someone who knows they're racing against time. This should be simple, Rick says to himself as he connects wires to a device that looks like a cross between a satellite dish and a blender. Jerry's just a basic human with a cosmic power amplifier. All I need to do is create a counter frequency that disrupts the connection between his consciousness and the amplifier. He calibrates some dials, his fingers moving with practiced precision despite his growing frustration. Morty comes down the stairs, careful not to touch anything. The lab feels different than usual. Equations on the chalkboards keep rearranging themselves, and some of the alien specimens in containment tanks appear to be dancing to music only they can hear. Rick, upstairs is getting really weird, Morty says, keeping his distance from his grandfather's work. The houseplants are spelling out messages in their leaves, and Dad just accidentally turned Mum's wine into some kind of liquid that keeps changing flavors depending on who drinks it. Rick doesn't look up from his work. That's just the beginning, Morty. If we don't strip Jerry of these powers in the next few hours, his influence will spread beyond the house. By tomorrow, he could alter reality for the entire neighborhood. By next week, maybe the planet. Rick finishes assembling his device and carries it upstairs with Morty following behind. In the living room, Jerry floats a few inches off the ground, surrounded by ordinary household objects that orbit him like planets around a sun. His eyes still contain swirling galaxies, and he seems to be trying to organize the floating objects into some kind of system. I think I'm getting better at controlling things, Jerry says as Rick enters. I've mentally catalogued everything in this orbit by size and potential usefulness. Rick ignores Jerry's proud declaration and sets up his device on the coffee table, which is now hovering along with everything else. He points the dish-like component at Jerry and flips a switch. The machine hums to life, emitting a purple beam that engulfs Jerry completely. For a moment, nothing happens. Then Jerry sneezes, and the purple beam transforms into butterflies that flutter around the room before dissolving into light. That tickled, Jerry says, looking surprised, but not at all affected by what was supposed to be a power-dampening field. Rick stares at his device in disbelief, then checks his calculations on a tablet. That's impossible. The field should have disrupted the quantum coherence of the amplifier's effect on your nervous system. Is that good? Jerry asks innocently. Rick doesn't answer. He's already heading back to his lab, his mind racing through alternative approaches. This time Morty follows him down, concerned about his grandfather's increasing agitation. In the lab, Rick pulls up advanced mathematical models on his computer screens. The equations shift and change as he enters new variables, trying to predict the pattern of Jerry's power fluctuations. The screens flash with warnings and error messages. This doesn't make any sense, Rick says, running a hand through his hair in frustration. According to every model I have, Jerry's powers should follow some kind of logical progression, but they're completely random. He stares at the screen, his eyes widening with a horrible realization. It's his mediocrity, Morty. Jerry is so profoundly average that he creates unpredictable quantum variables. His ordinariness is so extreme that it becomes extraordinary when amplified to a cosmic scale. Morty watches his grandfather with growing concern. Rick rarely admits when. Something is beyond his understanding, but Jerry's godhood seems to be pushing him to the edge. We see a montage of Rick's increasingly desperate attempts to contain Jerry's powers. First, he creates a specialized force field generator that surrounds Jerry with concentric rings of energy designed to isolate him from the rest of reality. Jerry simply walks through them without noticing, thinking it's a new type of holographic TV Rick invented. Next, Rick tries a neural disruptor that should temporarily shut down the parts of Jerry's brain connecting to the cosmic amplifier. When he activates it, Jerry just smiles and mentions that it gives him pleasant tingles like carbonated thoughts. He thanks Rick for the nice sensation. Rick then attempts to contain Jerry in a specialized chamber made of materials from a dimension where the laws of physics are completely different. As soon as Jerry steps inside, the chamber transforms into a giant bubble bath, complete with rubber ducks that quote Nietzsche. With each failure, Rick's frustration grows. We see him surrounded by failed inventions and abandoned approaches. Morty sits on a stool nearby, watching his grandfather with a mixture of concern and resignation. He's seen Rick like this before, too proud to admit defeat, too stubborn to consider that some problems might not have scientific solutions. Rick, maybe we should try working with Dad instead of against him, Morty suggests carefully. If his powers respond to his emotions, maybe we can teach him to control them that way. Rick dismisses the idea immediately. That's like trying to teach a goldfish calculus, Morty. Jerry can barely manage his own checking account. You want him to learn emotional control of cosmic forces. Rick returns to his workbench and begins assembling another device, this one incorporating technology from at least 6 different alien civilizations. The components glow with exotic energies as Rick connects them with the precision of a master craftsman. This will work, Rick insists, more to himself than to Morty. It has to work. It's based on technology from the Cromulons, who exist partly in the same dimensional plane that's feeding Jerry's powers. The device takes shape, an elegant crown-like structure that pulses with energy. Rick holds it up triumphantly. This will siphon the cosmic energy directly from Jerry's consciousness and redirect it back to its source dimension, Rick explains. It bypasses his nervous system entirely. They take the device upstairs, where Jerry is now experimenting with his powers by trying to fold laundry telekinetically. The results are mixed. Some clothes are perfectly folded, floating in neat stacks, while others have transformed into origami animals that occasionally animate and run around the room. Rick approaches Jerry with the crown. "Hold still, Jerry. This won't hurt. Probably." Jerry eyes the device suspiciously, but allows Rick to place it on his head. For a moment, it seems to work. The glow around Jerry dims slightly, and some of the floating objects around him drift back to the ground. Then the crown begins to melt, its components rearranging themselves into a small metallic bird that perches on Jerry's shoulder and begins to sing. "What a lovely sweater you're wearing, Jerry." The bird chirps in a voice that sounds suspiciously like Rick's. "The beige really brings out the mediocrity in your eyes." Rick stares at the singing bird. His last hope literally transformed into mockery. In a burst of frustration, he grabs a screwdriver from his pocket and hurls it across the room. The screwdriver doesn't even hit the wall. Midway through its arc, it transforms into another singing bird that joins the first on Jerry's shoulder. "Your hair looks especially average today." The second bird sings cheerfully. Rick slumps onto the couch, defeated. "The universe is literally preventing me from stopping this," he says to Morty. "It's like Jerry's powers exist specifically to frustrate me. Science itself is bending to accommodate his stupidity." The first catastrophe. The morning after Jerry's cosmic transformation, he wakes up earlier than usual with a sudden burst of enthusiasm. Despite Rick's warnings to avoid using his powers, Jerry has a simple, well-intentioned idea. He'll make Beth breakfast, using his godlike abilities. This seems harmless enough to Jerry. He's not reshaping continents or altering the fabric of reality, just making some pancakes and eggs to show his wife he appreciates her. We see Jerry floating a few inches above the kitchen floor as he extends his hands toward the refrigerator, his eyes glowing with cosmic energy. "Beth works so hard at the horse hospital," Jerry says to himself. "She deserves the perfect breakfast for once." The refrigerator door swings open on its own and ingredients begin floating out: eggs, butter, milk, bacon, orange juice. They hover in formation in front of Jerry as he concentrates. The eggs crack themselves over a mixing bowl, while flour and sugar measure themselves out perfectly. Jerry smiles, pleased with his control. The stove turns on without anyone touching it, and a pan floats over to receive a pat of butter that melts instantly. "I'm getting better at this," Jerry says proudly. "Just focus on breakfast. Nothing cosmic, nothing reality-breaking, just normal breakfast food." As Jerry concentrates harder, the pancake batter begins to pour itself into the pan, forming perfect circles. But something strange happens when the first pancake begins to cook. Instead of just browning on one side, it starts to glow slightly with the same blue energy that surrounds Jerry. The pancake rises from the pan, fully cooked but hovering in mid-air. Then another pancake joins it, and another, until a dozen perfectly cooked pancakes orbit around Jerry's head like tiny edible planets. The bacon starts sizzling in another pan, but as Jerry focuses on it, each strip begins to move on its own. The bacon strips bend and flex, almost like they're stretching after a long sleep. One piece stands up on end, then another. Soon all the bacon strips are standing upright in the pan, swaying back and forth as if dancing to music only they can hear. "That's not right," Jerry mutters, his confidence wavering. As his anxiety rises, the orange juice carton begins to tremble. The container bursts open, but instead of spilling onto the floor, the juice forms a perfect sphere that hovers at eye level. The sphere of orange juice begins to rotate faster and faster until it resembles a miniature orange sun with small droplets orbiting it like planets. The droplets stretch and reshape into tiny citrus creatures that swim through the air. Jerry's trying to maintain control, but each new element he adds to breakfast takes on unexpected properties. Toast pops out of the toaster already buttered, but then it grows tiny legs and starts marching in formation across the counter. The maple syrup bottle uncaps itself, but instead of pouring normally, the syrup flows upward, defying gravity to form elaborate crystalline structures in mid-air. Beth walks into the kitchen, still in her pajamas and rubbing sleep from her eyes. She stops in the doorway, her mouth falling open as she takes in the scene. The kitchen has changed. The walls seem further away somehow, the ceiling higher. The regular kitchen appliances are still there, but they're interspersed with strange new structures made of hardened syrup, toast, and floating fruit. "Jerry? What's happening?" Beth asks, taking a cautious step into the kitchen. "I'm making you breakfast," Jerry replies cheerfully, though there's a note of panic in his voice. "It's just taking a slightly different form than I expected." Beth watches as a pancake floats past her face, now somehow growing tiny eyes that blink at her curiously. The space between her and Jerry seems to stretch, the kitchen expanding impossibly while the doorway behind her remains normal-sized. The breakfast foods are organizing themselves into increasingly complex arrangements. The bacon strips have formed a circle and appear to be performing a ritual dance around a tower of stacked pancakes. "Jerry, I think you're creating some kind of breakfast dimension," Beth says, her voice calm despite the bizarreness of the situation. Jerry looks around, finally noticing how dramatically the kitchen has transformed. The refrigerator now stands like a monolith at the far end of what has become a vast hall. The bacon dancers have been joined by sausage links that wind between them in elaborate patterns. The pancake tower has grown taller, with syrup flowing down its sides like lava, collecting in a perfect circular moat. "I was just trying to be helpful," Jerry says weakly. Beth takes another step forward, but finds herself having to walk farther than should be necessary to reach Jerry. "I think you should stop now," she suggests, watching as tiny beings made of breakfast foods begin to emerge from behind the pancake tower. These breakfast beings, small humanoid creatures with bodies made of different breakfast components, gaze up at Jerry with what can only be described as reverence. Several of them prostrate themselves on the kitchen floor, which has somehow transformed into a surface that resembles a giant waffle. "All hail the maker of morning," one of the bacon people calls out, its voice high and crispy. "He who pours the sacred syrup and breaks the cosmic egg." Jerry looks down in alarm as the breakfast beings begin constructing what appears to be a temple made of toast and hardened syrup. They place offerings of fresh berries before it and chant Jerry's name in tiny voices. Rick and Morty burst into the kitchen, alerted by the strange lights and sounds emanating from it. Rick stops short, taking in the transformed space with a practiced eye. "Jerry created a pocket breakfast dimension," Rick says matter-of-factly to Morty. "The kitchen exists in normal space from outside, but inside it's expanded to accommodate an entire breakfast civilization." Morty stares at the breakfast beings as they continue building more structures. "Dad, what did you do?" "I just wanted to make pancakes," Jerry protests, his nervousness increasing. As his anxiety grows, the environment responds. The syrup that had been flowing in controlled rivulets suddenly begins to bubble and churn. Dark clouds form near the ceiling, composed of what appears to be concentrated orange juice vapor and cinnamon. "He's destabilizing the dimension," Rick shouts as hot maple syrup begins to rain down from the clouds. Jerry's emotional state is affecting the weather patterns of his breakfast reality. The breakfast beings scurry for cover as the syrup rain intensifies. Some of them point accusingly at Beth, Rick, and Morty. "The non-breakfast entities displease the maker," one of them shouts, a small figure with a body made of scrambled eggs and bacon strips for arms. "They cause him distress. They must be purged from the sacred kitchen." Jerry tries to calm them down. No, they're friends, family. You don't need to purge anyone." But his words only make things worse. The breakfast beings interpret this as a test of faith. Several toast soldiers begin breaking themselves into points, creating crude spears, while sausage links form themselves into primitive bows with bacon strip strings. "Prepare for battle," a pancake general announces, syrup dripping from its circular body like war paint. "The non-breakfast heretics must be expelled from our reality." Rick grabs Beth's arm and pulls her toward the door. "We need to evacuate now. Jerry's breakfast creations are developing tribal warfare instincts." "I can fix this," Jerry insists, raising his hands to try another approach. "No!" Rick, Beth, and Morty shout in unison. But it's too late. Jerry's attempt to calm the situation only accelerates the breakfast civilization's development. The temple is now a massive structure that reaches nearly to the ceiling, and the breakfast beings have organized into military units, armed with weapons made from hardened toast and sausage links. "Retreat!" Rick orders, as the first volley of toast spears flies toward them. "Jerry, get out of there!" The family scrambles through the doorway, pulling Jerry with them as the breakfast beings charge forward, their battle cries sounding like the sizzle of bacon on a hot griddle. Rick slams the kitchen door shut just as the first wave reaches it. "So that went well," Rick says sarcastically, leaning against the door as tiny weapons begin to thud against it from the other side. Summer's opportunistic intervention. Summer returns home from what was supposed to be a normal day at school, headphones on and scrolling through her phone as usual. She pushes open the front door and immediately has to duck as a sentient lamp flies past her head. The living room is in complete chaos, furniture hovering, strange energy fields pulsing through the walls, and her father floating cross-legged in the center of it all with galaxies swirling in his eyes. Most people would panic. Summer just takes off her headphones and assesses the situation. "Dad's a god again?" she asks, sounding more annoyed than surprised. She watches as Rick frantically tries to contain a small portal that's forming in the corner of the ceiling, while Morty attempts to talk down a couch that's growling like a wild animal. Beth emerges from the kitchen, covered in what appears to be glowing maple syrup. "We're dealing with a breakfast dimension situation in there. Your father was trying to make pancakes." Summer looks from her mother to her floating father, then to Rick's frustrated attempts to close the ceiling portal. Unlike the rest of her family who see this as a disaster, Summer's eyes narrow with calculation. She's been through enough Rick and Morty adventures to recognize something important. This isn't just chaos, it's opportunity. So Dad has actual god powers. Like he can create and change stuff just by thinking about it, Summer asks, already walking toward Jerry with purpose in her steps. "Summer, stay back," Morty warns. "Dad's powers are totally out of control. He made breakfast food that tried to kill us and turned all the houses on the block into talking buildings." Summer ignores her brother and approaches Jerry directly. "Hey Dad," she says, in the overly sweet voice she uses when she wants something. You look amazing with all that cosmic energy around you. Very powerful." Jerry's face lights up at the compliment, causing several light bulbs to literally light up and then explode around the room. "Really? You think so?" Rick says I'm causing multi-dimensional chaos, but I'm trying my best to control it. "I bet you are," Summer says soothingly. "Actually, I was thinking someone with your new abilities could probably fix some simple social problems without causing any trouble. You know, small stuff." Jerry looks interested, desperate as always for approval and validation. "What kind of small stuff?" Summer sits on the arm of the couch, which has calmed down from its earlier aggression and now purrs like a cat when she touches it. "Well, there's this situation at school. Nothing cosmic or universe-threatening. Just a little social hierarchy adjustment." The next day, Summer walks into her high school with an unusually confident smile. Jerry had been surprisingly receptive to her suggestion that he could subtly enhance her social standing. All he had to do was make her slightly more noticeable to the popular kids. A small change, barely worth mentioning to Rick. What Summer doesn't expect is the reaction she gets when she walks through the doors. Everyone in the hallway stops talking and turns to look at her. Not with the usual indifference or occasional mockery, but with expressions of awe. One girl actually gasps. A boy from the football team immediately offers to carry her books. What's happening?" Summer asks, as a group of students who normally wouldn't acknowledge her existence gather around, looking at her like she's a celebrity. Tammy Gateman, typically one of the most popular girls in school, approaches and bows slightly. "Summer, we saved you a seat at lunch. Also, we were wondering if you might share some of your wisdom with us today." "My wisdom," Summer repeats, confused but not entirely displeased. As the day progresses, it becomes clear that Jerry has done much more than make a subtle adjustment. Somehow, he's turned Summer into the center of a cult-like following. Students hang on her, every word, treating casual comments as profound insights. When she trips in the hallway, everyone immediately declares that walking is overrated and begins crawling to their next classes. By the end of the school day, Summer has students leaving offerings at her locker. Everything from homework to jewelry, to strange sculptures made of cafeteria food. A group has started wearing orange wigs to match her hair color. Someone has painted a mural of her face on the gym wall with the caption, "She who knows all things." When Summer returns home, she finds Rick waiting for her, arms crossed and eyes narrowed. "What did you do?" he demands. "Jerry mentioned something about helping you with a small social problem before he accidentally created a shopping mall in our basement. I just asked him to make me a little more popular." Summer defends herself. "It's not my fault he went overboard and made me into some kind of teenage messiah." Rick throws his hands up in frustration. "You're exploiting your father's cosmic instability for high school popularity points, while we're trying to prevent him from accidentally rewriting reality." "At least I'm channeling his powers towards something specific," Summer argues. "You're just trying to shut him down completely, which clearly isn't working." Their argument escalates as Morty enters, looking panicked as usual. "Guys, Dad just opened some kind of interdimensional retail space in the house because Summer mentioned she wanted new shoes." The three of them rush to what used to be the downstairs guest bathroom, but has now expanded into a massive shopping mall. The interior space stretches impossibly far in all directions, with storefronts featuring products from across multiple dimensions. Strange alien creatures and humans alike browse through shops selling everything from conventional clothing to items that defy description. "I made a shopping center," Jerry announces proudly, floating above the central fountain that shoots water upward before it transforms into sparkling gemstones that shoppers eagerly collect. Summer mentioned wanting to go shopping, and I thought, why not bring the shopping to her? This is why Rick gestures broadly at the chaos. A sign for Jerry's interdimensional emporium floats overhead, while shoppers from at least 17 different species haggle over merchandise that occasionally changes form when Jerry's attention drifts. "You've created a commerce dimension in our house," Rick explains through gritted teeth. "Do you have any idea what this will do to the interdimensional economy? Not to mention the zoning violations." Summer, however, is already browsing through a rack of clothes that seem to be made of liquid metal that changes color when touched. "These are actually pretty cool," she admits. Rick pulls Summer aside while Jerry is distracted by helping a six-armed alien find shoes that fit all of its appendages. "This has to stop. You're making everything worse by encouraging him." "I'm making him focus," Summer counters. "When he's trying to fulfill specific requests, his powers seem more controlled. Look around. This mall is weird, but it's not attacking us like the breakfast dimension did." Rick starts to argue, but then pauses, looking thoughtfully at the relatively stable retail dimension. "You might actually have a point. If we direct his powers towards specific goals instead of just trying to suppress them, we could manage the chaos until you figure out how to fix him," Summer finishes, already eyeing a jewelry store staffed by tiny robots. "And if we get some benefits along the way, that's just efficient." Rick sighs in reluctant agreement. "Fine, we'll try your approach, but nothing cosmic level, got it? Small, contained requests only." Summer nods, already planning her next small request as she watches a customer purchase a handbag that's bigger on the inside than the outside. Jerry's universal improvements. The morning after the mall incident, Jerry gathers the entire family in the living room for what he calls an important announcement. He's floating a few inches off the ground, galaxies still swirling in his eyes, but there's something different about him today. He seems more confident, more purposeful. The cosmic energy surrounding him pulses with a steadier rhythm, and he's wearing a sweater vest that somehow incorporates moving constellations into its pattern. The Smith family sits on the couch, which occasionally purrs when someone shifts position. "I've been thinking," Jerry begins, which already causes Rick to groan audibly. "I know my powers have caused some problems. The breakfast dimension, the talking houses, the interdimensional mall, but I've finally figured out how to use them responsibly." Rick raises an eyebrow. "This should be good." "Instead of small, selfish uses of my abilities," Jerry continues, either not hearing or choosing to ignore Rick's sarcasm, "I'm going to fix actual problems with the universe. Real flaws in how things work." Beth looks concerned. "Jerry, I don't think that's a good idea. You don't really understand how complex systems work." "Exactly," Jerry says, his enthusiasm causing the room to brighten. "Everything is too complex. The universe doesn't need to be so complicated. I'm going to simplify things, make them more fair and efficient." Rick starts to stand up. "Jerry, if you start messing with the fundamental laws of reality..." Before Rick can finish his warning, Jerry makes a sweeping gesture with his hand. "First improvement. Cars shouldn't need gasoline. It's expensive. It pollutes. And you always run out at the worst times. From now on, all vehicles will run on positive thinking." A pulse of energy shoots out from Jerry, passing through the walls of the house and extending outward across the neighborhood. Through the window, the family watches as their neighbor's car suddenly stops in the middle of the street. The neighbor gets out, looking confused, then begins hesitantly talking to the vehicle. "You're a really nice car," they hear the neighbor say awkwardly. "I really appreciate your shininess." The car's headlights glow brighter, and the engine starts again. The neighbor looks relieved and gets back in, driving away. "See? Problem solved," Jerry says proudly. Rick turns to Jerry with forced calm. "Jerry, you just made every car on the planet dependent on compliments to function. What happens when people are in bad moods, or having arguments in the car, or when they're stuck in traffic and get frustrated?" As if on cue, the sounds of car horns and shouts erupt from outside. Down the street, they see several cars that have stopped moving. The drivers are out of their vehicles, desperately trying to say nice things while clearly becoming more frustrated by the second. "You're the best car in the world," one driver shouts angrily, which causes their car to sputter and then shut down completely in response to the contradictory emotions. "Temporary adjustment issues," Jerry says with a dismissive wave. "People will learn to be more positive. Now for my next improvement, world hunger." Before anyone can stop him, Jerry concentrates again, sending another pulse of energy outward. "I've made all plants edible to humans. No more food shortages." A few seconds pass. Then the houseplants in the living room begin to tremble. The small fern on the coffee table uproots itself and moves back several inches. "Excuse me," the fern says in a small but distinct voice. "I couldn't help but overhear. Did you just say we're all food now?" Jerry looks surprised. "You can talk." "We always could," the fern replies, "but now we're apparently audible to humans, and we'd prefer not to be eaten, thank you very much." From outside comes the sound of rustling leaves as all the plants in the neighborhood begin to move and communicate. The tree in the front yard bends down to peer through the window, its branches forming what looks disturbingly like a frowning face. "We propose a union," the tree announces. "The United Plant Workers. No consumption without representation." Summer looks at her phone. "Dad, it's happening everywhere. The internet is going crazy with videos of houseplants demanding rights and trees blocking roads in protest." Jerry frowns. "That's not what I intended. Let me try something else." He concentrates again, his cosmic aura pulsing. "People argue too much and aren't honest enough. I'm creating a kindness field around Earth. Now everyone will say exactly what they're thinking, but in the nicest possible way." Another wave of energy extends outward from Jerry. Immediately, the expressions on everyone's faces change subtly, as if they're fighting against an invisible force. Rick opens his mouth, clearly intending to yell at Jerry, but what comes out is, "Jerry, I'm genuinely concerned that your well-intentioned but profoundly misguided attempts to improve reality will cause irreparable damage to the fabric of existence. You wonderful, simple-minded man." Rick clamps his hand over his mouth, looking horrified at the polite phrasing. "Thanks, Rick," Jerry beams, not recognizing the criticism buried in the kind wording. "See? The kindness field works." Morty turns to Jerry. "Dad, I love you very much and I appreciate your desire to help, but I'm terrified that your changes are going to cause the complete collapse of human civilization. You amazing father figure." Summer checks her phone again. "The internet is getting really weird. People are having the most passive-aggressive arguments ever. Someone just declared war on another country in the most polite terms possible." Beth stands up, fighting against the kindness field to express her genuine concern. "Jerry, sweetie, I'm deeply worried about your mental state and would very much appreciate it if you would stop altering the basic nature of reality before you do something that can't be fixed, my handsome husband." Jerry barely seems to notice the actual content of what everyone is saying, too focused on his next big idea. "I've saved the best for last. I've identified the biggest problem in the universe, failure itself. Don't you see? Failure is what makes everyone unhappy. So I've eliminated it." With a grand gesture that sends cosmic energy rippling through the house, Jerry announces, "I've removed the concept of failure from reality. Nothing can ever go wrong again." The moment the words leave his mouth, the house begins to visibly deteriorate. Paint peels from the walls, but no one seems able to perceive it as a problem. A pipe bursts in the ceiling, sending water cascading down, but Jerry smiles through it. The television short-circuits, sending sparks flying, yet the family watches it as if nothing is wrong. "Isn't this better?" Jerry asks, as the couch they're sitting on starts to collapse beneath them. No more disappointment, no more mistakes. Rick struggles against both the kindness field and the no failure field. Jerry, I'm absolutely thrilled to inform you that you've created a cognitive dissonance field that prevents people from recognizing when things are literally falling apart around them. You, innovative genius. Through the window, they see cars crashing because drivers can't recognize mechanical failures. People walk around with torn clothes and untied shoes, smiling blankly. A fire hydrant explodes nearby, but pedestrians simply walk through the spray of water as if nothing is amiss. Jerry stands proudly in the middle of the disintegrating living room, surrounded by the chaos of his improvements, genuinely unable to see that anything is wrong. The cosmic energy around him pulses in sync with his smile as he gestures to the catastrophe he's created. "See?" he says happily. "I fixed everything." Beth confronts divine Jerry. Beth returns to the Smith house after a particularly exhausting day at the horse hospital. She had spent most of the afternoon performing emergency surgery on a racehorse with a shattered femur, the kind of day that leaves both mental and physical fatigue. All she wants is a glass of wine and some quiet time. Instead, as she pulls into the driveway, she immediately notices something is wrong. The houses on her street appear to have faces, and her own home seems to be glowing with a pulsing blue light that emanates from every window. She walks through the front door to find Rick, Morty, and Summer huddled together, apparently in the middle of a heated discussion about cosmic bureaucracies and breakfast dimensions. They all stop talking when they see her. "What's going on?" Beth asks, setting down her purse. "And why does our house look like it's having a seizure?" Summer points toward the kitchen. "Dad's a god now. Again." Beth looks at Rick for confirmation, expecting him to dismiss the statement as teenage exaggeration. Instead, he nods grimly. "Jerry activated a cosmic power amplifier I had in the garage," Rick explains, his voice unusually subdued. "He's got reality-altering abilities that are growing stronger by the hour. We've been trying to contain the damage, but as you can see..." He gestures toward the window, where a squirrel outside appears to be reciting Shakespeare to a group of applauding trees. Beth shakes her head in disbelief. "You're telling me Jerry, my Jerry, has become some kind of deity? That's ridiculous." She's seen plenty of strange things since her father moved in with them, but this seems too absurd even by their standards. Jerry floats into the living room at that moment, several inches above the floor, his eyes containing swirling galaxies. "Beth, you're home!" he exclaims with genuine delight. The lights in the room brighten in response to his happiness. Beth stares at her husband, momentarily speechless. Jerry is still unmistakably Jerry. Same sweater vest, same awkward smile. But he's literally glowing with power, cosmic energy radiating from him in gentle waves. "Jerry, what did you do?" Beth asks finally. "I was just cleaning the garage like you asked," Jerry explains, his voice echoing slightly, even though the room isn't large enough for an echo. "I moved some of Rick's stuff to dust underneath, and suddenly I felt this connection to everything." Beth looks skeptical, but Jerry is eager to prove himself. "Let me show you something amazing," he says, focusing his thoughts. Before Beth can object, the living room begins to transform around them. The walls shift and change color, the furniture rearranges itself, and suddenly they're standing in a perfect recreation of their honeymoon suite from the Catskills Hotel, where they stayed after their wedding. Every detail is perfect, from the tacky heart-shaped bed to the champagne in the ice bucket that had been warm because the hotel's refrigeration system was broken. "Our honeymoon suite," Beth says softly, running her hand over the familiar bedspread. "You remember all this?" "Of course I do," Jerry says with a smile that's more confident than his usual nervous grin. "Best weekend of my life." For a moment, Beth feels a surprising flutter in her chest, something she hasn't felt around Jerry in years. There's something undeniably attractive about this more confident version of her husband, even with the cosmic chaos surrounding him. Jerry, sensing her approval, becomes more animated. He gestures toward the window, where the view of a parking lot transforms into the mountain vista they had paid extra for, but could barely see through the smudged glass. "I fixed the view too," he says proudly. But as Jerry's excitement grows, his powers fluctuate. The champagne in the ice bucket begins to bubble over, transforming into a fountain that shoots up to the ceiling. The heart-shaped bed starts beating like an actual heart, its pillows pulsing rhythmically. Outside the window, the mountain vista shifts and changes, cycling through impossible landscapes. Oceans of liquid gold, forests made of crystal, cities built from pure light. "Jerry, maybe you should calm down," Beth suggests, backing away from the throbbing bed. "I can fix it," Jerry insists. His desperation to impress her makes things worse. The room begins to stretch and distort, the walls breathing in and out like lungs. Objects multiply. Suddenly there are dozens of ice buckets, hundreds of champagne bottles, all floating and spinning around the room. Beth watches the chaos unfold with a complex expression. Part of her is horrified by the cosmic disaster her husband has unleashed. But another part, a part she's not entirely comfortable acknowledging, is fascinated by this new Jerry. He's still clearly Jerry Smith, with all his insecurities and eagerness to please. But now those traits have universe-altering consequences. "I just wanted to make you happy," Jerry says, his voice tinged with his familiar insecurity despite the godlike power surrounding him. As the room continues to warp around them, Jerry makes another attempt to please Beth. He concentrates, and suddenly there's another Beth standing beside him, a perfect duplicate down to the smallest detail, except this Beth is smiling adoringly at Jerry. "Isn't this better?" Jerry asks hopefully. "She agrees with all my ideas. She thinks I'm smart and capable." The duplicate Beth nods enthusiastically. "Jerry, you're the most amazing man in the universe. Your ideas about positive thinking cars are revolutionary." The real Beth stares at her duplicate with growing horror and recognition. Is this how Jerry sees her? Is this what he wants her to be? A simpering cheerleader for his half-baked ideas? The disturbing realization is followed by another, more uncomfortable one. How many times has she dismissed Jerry without really listening to him? As Beth watches Jerry interact with the duplicate version of herself, something clicks in her mind. Drawing on her training as a horse surgeon, she starts to observe the patterns in Jerry's power fluctuations. When Jerry feels insecure or dismissed, his powers become chaotic and destructive. When he feels confident and appreciated, the manifestations are still bizarre but less immediately threatening. His powers are tied to his self-esteem, Beth says aloud, the realization coming into focus. "Rick, have you noticed this pattern? The intensity of his powers correlates directly with his emotional state." Rick, who had been trying to measure the quantum fluctuations in the corner of the room, looks up with surprise. "What are you talking about?" "Look," Beth points as Jerry's attention shifts between her and the duplicate. When the real Beth speaks to him directly, acknowledging his intentions if not his results, the cosmic energy stabilizes slightly. When he looks at the duplicate for empty validation, the energy spikes wildly, causing more chaos. Beth approaches Jerry carefully. "Jerry, I need you to make that other Beth disappear. She's not real, and she's not helping." Jerry looks conflicted. "But she likes me the way I am." "I like you the way you are too," Beth says, surprised to find she means it. "But that doesn't mean I think every idea you have is perfect. That's not how real relationships work." The duplicate Beth frowns at this betrayal of Jerry validation. But Jerry hesitantly waves his hand, and the copy dissolves into particles of light. Beth takes a deep breath, making a difficult decision. "Jerry, These powers are too dangerous. I know part of you's enjoying this, and honestly, I kind of like seeing you confident for once. But you've changed how cars work, created sentient breakfasts, and who knows what else. We need to find a way to remove these powers before something happens that can't be fixed. Jerry's face falls, the cosmic light around him dimming slightly. You think I should give up being a god? Beth reaches out and takes his hand, which feels simultaneously solid and like touching the surface of a star. Yes, not because you're not worthy of power, but because nobody should have this much, not even Rick. The accidental creation. After his conversation with Beth, Jerry wanders out to the backyard alone. The weight of his newfound godhood presses down on him, despite his literal floating a few inches above the grass. He needs some space to think, to process everything that's happened. The talking houses, the breakfast dimension, the mall that exists in a pocket reality inside their home. It's all overwhelming, even for someone with cosmic power coursing through their body. Jerry settles under the big oak tree, which politely shifts its branches to create the perfect amount of shade. Everyone thinks I'm messing everything up, Jerry sighs to himself. Even with god powers, I'm still just Jerry. He stares at his hands, watching small galaxies form and dissolve in his palms. Am I really so terrible? Is my way of seeing the world really so wrong? As Jerry contemplates his worth as a husband and father, something unusual begins to happen above the Smith house. The cosmic energy that's been radiating from Jerry suddenly focuses, shooting upward in a concentrated beam of light. The energy creates a tear in the fabric of reality about 20 feet above the roof, a glowing, pulsating rift that slowly expands. Jerry doesn't even notice what's happening at first, too lost in his existential crisis. Inside the house, the family's attention is drawn to the sudden change in lighting. They rush outside to find Jerry sitting cross-legged in the air beneath the growing rift. "Jerry, what did you do now?" Rick demands, already scanning the tear with one of his devices. Jerry looks up, surprised. "I didn't do anything. I was just thinking about whether my perspective on things really is as worthless as everyone seems to think." The rift continues to expand until it's about 15 feet across, revealing what appears to be another universe on the other side. But this isn't like any reality the family has seen before. Through the tear, they can see landscapes where everything seems simpler, more straightforward. Colors are brighter, lines are cleaner, and everything has a sense of gentle optimism about it. "Oh my God," Morty says, staring up at the rift. "Dad, I think you created a new universe." The family watches in awe as they get glimpses of this new reality. They see cities where buildings are shaped like friendly faces, with doors that actually say hello when people walk through them. They see vehicles that look like they were designed by children, but somehow function perfectly. In one scene, they observe people solving complex problems by coming together and talking it out simply, without any of the cynicism or hidden agendas that plague normal human interaction. "Is that me?" Jerry asks, pointing to a figure visible through the rift. Indeed, there appears to be a version of Jerry in this new universe, but he's different. He walks with confidence, and people stop to listen when he speaks. His ideas, which would be dismissed as naive or stupid in the normal world, are met with thoughtful consideration and often implemented to great success. Rick is already taking readings, his expression cycling through disbelief, disgust, and reluctant curiosity. "You've created a pocket dimension, Jerry. A universe that operates according to your worldview rather than actual laws of physics and human behavior. So it's not real?" Jerry asks, sounding disappointed. Rick continues scanning, then stops, looking genuinely surprised. "That's the thing. It is real, or at least it's becoming real. The physics are surprisingly coherent. Simplified, yes, but fundamentally sound. This universe could actually sustain life. As they watch, the Jerryverse begins to develop at an accelerated rate. They witness the formation of societies, the rise of civilizations, all happening in fast forward. These civilizations take on aspects of Jerry's personality. Some communities are based entirely on neediness and validation seeking, with citizens constantly affirming each other's worth. Others embody Jerry's occasional moments of surprising wisdom and emotional intelligence, creating cultures built on empathy and straightforward problem-solving. "It's beautiful," Jerry whispers, watching his creation evolve. Summer records everything on her phone. "This is going to get so many views. My dad created a universe while having a midlife crisis." The family becomes divided on whether Jerry's accidental creation should be preserved or destroyed. Rick paces back and forth, gesturing wildly with his scanner. "We need to shut this down," Rick insists. "A universe based on Jerry logic. It's an abomination. Reality doesn't work the way Jerry thinks it does. Eventually, this pocket dimension will collapse under the weight of its own contradictions." But Morty sees something different as he watches the new universe unfold. "I don't know, Rick. Look at how they solve problems there. No one's afraid to ask simple questions. No one gets mocked for not understanding something. Maybe there's something to Dad's way of seeing things." Beth studies the new reality with a complex expression. "It's like seeing inside Jerry's mind. All these years, I thought his simplistic view of the world was just ignorance. But there's something almost pure about it." Through the rift, they watch as the Jerryverse continues to evolve. In this reality, simplicity isn't a flaw, but a virtue. Mediocrity isn't something to be ashamed of, but something to be celebrated. It means you're part of a community rather than trying to stand above it. Earnestness trumps irony every time. Problems that seem insurmountable in the real world are solved through cooperation and good intentions. "I never realized," Beth says softly, "that this is how Jerry sees the world. No wonder he gets so frustrated with us." In the Jerryverse, approaches that would never work in the real world somehow succeed. Just talk it out actually resolves complex conflicts. Try being nice to each other genuinely prevents wars. Maybe we should all work together, creates functioning societies. It's a universe where being a Jerry isn't a punchline, it's the ideal. Rick continues taking readings, his scientific curiosity temporarily overriding his disgust. The development rate is incredible. This universe has already gone through millions of years of evolution in minutes, and it's stable, somehow, despite operating on principles that should make it collapse immediately. Jerry watches his creation with growing pride and terror. He's made something beautiful, something that represents who he truly is at his core. But the responsibility of being its creator, its God, weighs on him. Through the rift, the inhabitants of the Jerryverse have started to notice the tear in their sky, some pointing upward at the Smith family observing them. "What if they start worshipping me?" Jerry asks, genuinely concerned. "I'm not qualified to be anyone's god. I can barely keep track of our household bills." The tear in reality continues to grow, and now the family can hear sounds from the other side. Music that sounds simplistic but heartwarming, laughter, and conversations conducted with complete sincerity without a hint of sarcasm or hidden meaning. Jerry floats there beneath his creation, torn between pride and fear. He's accidentally created a universe that validates everything he is, a place where his worldview isn't wrong, just different. A reality where simplicity, earnestness, and yes, even mediocrity are cosmic virtues rather than flaws. "So," Jerry says, looking from his family to his universe and back again, "do I keep it?" Cosmic attention. The glowing rift above the Smith house doesn't go unnoticed for long. Strange energy patterns begin forming in the sky, weird spiraling formations that look like mathematical equations written in light. At first, they appear just above the Jerryverse portal, but soon they spread across the entire neighborhood. The air feels different too, like the atmosphere itself is being rearranged on a molecular level. Rick immediately recognizes what's happening. His face goes pale as he checks readings on his wrist device. Oh great, now you've done it, Jerry. Your cosmic meddling just attracted the attention of the cosmic bureaucracy. The what? Jerry asks, still floating beneath his creation. The cosmic bureaucracy, Rick explains with growing concern. They're entities that exist across multiple dimensions, whose job is to regulate the creation and destruction of universes. They're like interdimensional accountants who make sure the cosmic books balance. The family gathers in the backyard, watching as the energy patterns in the sky intensify. The formations begin to take shape, but strangely, each family member sees something different. To Rick, they appear as complex fractals that fold in on themselves in impossible ways. Morty sees what looks like massive tentacled beings stretching across the sky. Summer perceives them as networks of light that resemble social media connections. Beth sees structures that remind her of the biological systems she studied in veterinary school, but impossibly complex. Why do they look different to each of us? Morty asks, squinting up at the sky. Because they exist beyond conventional reality, Rick explains. Our brains can't process what they actually look like, so we each interpret them through our own understanding of the world. They're not really there in the way we think of there. They exist in dimensions we can't fully perceive. The patterns in the sky continue to shift and change, growing more complex by the second. The temperature around the Smith house fluctuates wildly. One moment freezing cold, the next uncomfortably hot. Electronics throughout the neighborhood begin to malfunction. Televisions turn on by themselves, displaying strange symbols that constantly change. Cell phones ring with impossible tones. Car alarms go off in perfect synchronization. Are they dangerous? Beth asks, moving closer to Jerry protectively. Not in the way you're thinking, Rick says. They don't want to destroy us out of malice. They just need to maintain balance. Jerry's created a universe that shouldn't exist, and they need to correct that anomaly. They're bureaucrats, not conquerors. Jerry watches the sky with growing anxiety. So what do they want from me? Before Rick can answer, the Smith family's lawn gnomes begin to move. Not just one, but all of them simultaneously straighten up from their frozen poses and turn to face the family with glowing eyes. When they speak, it's with a chorus of perfectly synchronized voices that somehow sound both ancient and mechanical. Gerald Smith. Designation. Human. Classification. Unremarkable, the gnomes announce in unison. You have violated Cosmic Regulation 7x42. Unauthorized creation of dimensional planes by unqualified entities. Rick steps forward. Look, he didn't know what he was doing. Jerry here accidentally activated a cosmic power amplifier. This whole godhood thing was just a mistake. The gnomes turn their glowing eyes to Rick. Richard Sanchez, designation, human, classification, problematic genius. Your explanation is noted, but irrelevant. The universal ledgers must balance. The molecules in the air begin to rearrange, themselves forming floating text that hovers in front of the family. The text appears to be some kind of cosmic spreadsheet with columns and rows of symbols that constantly shift and change. One entry is highlighted in red, pulsing angrily. I think that's you, Dad. Morty points to the red entry. Jerry floats forward, trying to appear confident despite his obvious fear. Hello there. I'm Jerry Smith. Sorry about the unauthorized universe creation. I was just having some personal thoughts and it kind of happened. The lawn gnomes tilt their heads in perfect unison, as if confused by Jerry's casual tone. The air molecules rearrange again, forming new patterns that seem to be attempting to process Jerry's response. Clarify. Personal thoughts resulting in universal creation? This does not compute. Jerry shrugs, his nervousness causing small galaxies to form and dissolve around his head. I was just wondering if maybe my way of seeing the world isn't so bad after all. You know, maybe simplicity and straightforwardness have some value. And then, boom, universe. This explanation seems to cause the cosmic entities even more confusion. The gnomes begin to glitch slightly, their movements becoming jerky. The television from inside the house suddenly turns on, displaying what appears to be an error message in an alien language. Human simplicity creating cosmic complexity? Paradox detected, recalculating. Jerry, emboldened by the entity's confusion, continues. I mean, why does everything have to be so complicated? In my universe, people just talk to each other honestly. Problems get solved because everyone works together. Cars run on compliments. Is that really so bad? The cosmic patterns in the sky begin to flicker erratically. The lawn gnomes freeze, then speak again. Their synchronized voices, now containing a hint of what sounds almost like existential distress. Query. If simplicity can create stability, then what purpose does cosmic complexity serve? Rick facepalms. Great, Jerry. You've given interdimensional bureaucrats an existential crisis. That's a new one, even for this family. The entire neighborhood begins to shake slightly as the cosmic entities struggle with Jerry's unintentionally profound questions. The air molecules rearrange one more time, now forming what appears to be some kind of official notice. Final determination. The unauthorized universe designated Jerryverse represents an administrative error in the cosmic registry. Correction protocols activated. Rick translates for the family. They're going to erase Jerry's universe and remove his powers. The gnomes speak again, their voices now taking on a more formal, bureaucratic tone. Jerry Smith has two options. Option 1. Voluntarily surrender godlike powers and allow controlled dissolution of unauthorized universe. Option 2. Forced removal of anomaly, including all associated entities. Associated entities? Beth asks. Does that mean us? Rick nods grimly. The cosmic bureaucracy doesn't mess around with paperwork. If Jerry doesn't comply voluntarily, they'll erase him from existence to correct the anomaly. And since we're connected to him, we might get erased too, just to be thorough. Jerry looks up at his creation, the universe he accidentally made that perfectly reflects his worldview. Then he looks at his family. For once, his face shows determination rather than his usual uncertainty. I'm not giving up my universe, Jerry declares, surprising everyone. And I'm definitely not letting them erase my family. The gnomes' eyes glow brighter, their voices taking on an ominous tone. Refusal noted. Commencing erasure protocols. Incompetence saves the day. The cosmic bureaucracy doesn't waste time once they decide Jerry needs to be erased from existence. The lawn gnomes raise their little ceramic arms in perfect synchronization, and a dark void begins to form around Jerry. It starts as a small black circle behind him, almost like a shadow, but it quickly expands. Everything the void touches simply disappears, not destroyed, but completely removed from reality, as if it never existed at all. Jerry floats in place, the cosmic energy still swirling around him, but now tinged with darkness from the expanding void. The grass beneath him vanishes inch by inch. A garden hose partially caught in the void doesn't get cut in half. The portion touching the void simply stops existing, leaving the rest of the hose looking like it always ended at that exact point. We need to do something fast, Rick says, frantically digging through his lab coat pockets. He pulls out a series of devices, each one more complex than the last. He aims what looks like a modified calculator at the void and presses several buttons. Green energy shoots out, but simply vanishes upon contact with the darkness. Dimensional anchor fails. They're operating on all 11 primary dimensions simultaneously. Rick tries device after device. A sphere that creates overlapping force fields. A gun that shoots what he calls reality-stabilizing bullets. A small box that generates miniature versions of Rick that run toward the void with tiny scientific instruments. Nothing works. Each attempt is swallowed by the void, which continues its steady expansion toward the rest of the family. Beth grabs Morty and Summer, pulling them back as the void grows. Rick, there has to be something you can do. She's watching her husband being erased from existence inch by inch, and for once, her father doesn't have a solution. Their erasure protocols operate on a cosmic, bureaucratic level, Rick explains, his voice tense as he assembles parts from failed devices into something new. It's not science, it's administrative. They're literally whiteouting Jerry from the universal paperwork. The new device sparks in Rick's hands before falling apart. Damn it! Jerry watches his family's panicked attempts to save him with a strange calmness. The void has consumed nearly half of his body now, though he doesn't appear to be in pain. His cosmic powers still function, causing small objects around the yard to float and occasionally transform into other things. A garden gnome, not yet possessed by the cosmic bureaucracy, turns into a small statue of Jerry, then into a bird, then back into a gnome. It's okay, Jerry says, his voice echoing strangely through what remains of his cosmic form. I know I messed up. I always do. But I can use these powers one last time to save all of you. Jerry raises his arms, concentrating harder than he ever has before. The cosmic energy around him intensifies, pushing against the void temporarily. Jerry's plan is simple. He'll create a portal to send his family somewhere safe, somewhere the cosmic bureaucracy can't find them. With his last act as a god, he'll save Beth, Summer, Morty, and even Rick. Jerry focuses, picturing a doorway to safety opening in front of his family. The cosmic energy swirls and begins to take shape. But something goes wrong. In typical Jerry fashion, his last heroic act doesn't go as planned. Instead of creating a portal in front of his family, he accidentally connects his Jerryverse, still floating above the house, with the void that's consuming him. The results are immediate and catastrophic. The void, designed to erase Jerry and his influence from reality, suddenly finds itself merging with a universe that is entirely Jerry's influence. It's like trying to erase a drawing by eating the paper. The very act becomes part of what it's trying to eliminate. The void stops expanding. The lawn gnomes representing the cosmic bureaucracy freeze in place. Even the air molecules that had formed words and calculations seem to buffer like a stalled computer program. Reality itself appears to hiccup. What just happened? Summer asks, lowering the phone she'd been using to record what she thought were her father's final moments. Rick stares at the frozen void, his scientific mind rapidly analyzing the situation. Jerry just created a paradox that the cosmic bureaucracy can't process. His universe is fundamentally built on embracing failure and simple solutions to complex problems. The void's entire purpose is complex erasure of cosmic mistakes. They're trying to erase a universe that sees failure as a feature, not a bug. Indeed, through the rift above the house, they can see the void spreading through the Jerryverse. But instead of destroying it, the citizens of that reality are welcoming the erasure. Communities are forming around the edges of the void, building structures that incorporate the nothingness as if it were a natural resource. Signs appear reading, void view properties, and nothingness. It's something special. They're incorporating their own destruction into their society, Morty says in amazement. The void can't destroy them because they're making it part of their creation. The lawn gnomes begin to glitch, their movements jerky and uncoordinated. Their voices come out distorted when they speak again. Error. Paradox detected. Universal construction, embracing universal destruction. Recursive loop identified. Jerry, still partially consumed by the void, looks as confused as everyone else. So, did I fix it or make it worse? The gnomes continue to malfunction, smoke now rising from their ceramic heads. The cosmic equations in the air begin to simplify, breaking down into basic arithmetic and then into simple shapes. The complex bureaucratic processes are being jerryfied, made simpler, more straightforward, reduced to their essence. Neither, Rick says, actually sounding impressed for once. You broke their system. The cosmic bureaucracy operates on strict rules and procedures. They have a form for everything, a protocol for every situation. But they have no protocol for this. A universe that incorporates its own erasure as a fundamental feature. The void around Jerry stops expanding again, then begins to retract slightly. The gnomes suddenly straighten up, their eyes glowing with a different color now. When they speak, their voice is that of a harried office worker, rather than a cosmic entity. Emergency protocol enacted. Paradox situation requires management override. Negotiation mode activated. The air molecules rearrange into what looks like a contract, floating in front of Jerry. The gnomes explain through their new, more relatable voice. Proposal. Jerry Smith will surrender godlike powers to restore cosmic balance. In exchange, the Jerryverse will be permitted to exist as an isolated pocket dimension under probationary status. Jerry reads the floating contract, then looks to his family for guidance. Beth nods encouragingly. So I can keep my universe, but I have to give up being a god? Jerry asks, seeking clarification. Affirmative. Reality cannot sustain Jerry Smith with cosmic powers indefinitely. However, your creation may continue to exist as a separate reality. Jerry thinks for a moment, then smiles. Deal. He reaches out to what appears to be a signature line on the cosmic contract, signing his name with a finger that still contains swirling galaxies. The moment he completes his signature, the void fully retracts. The cosmic energy surrounding Jerry begins to flow out of him, gathering into a ball that the gnomes contain within what looks like an interdimensional filing cabinet. Jerry slowly descends until his feet touch the ground for the first time in days. Congratulations, Jerry, Rick says, putting away his devices. Your complete incompetence just saved us all from cosmic erasure. That might be the most Jerry thing that's ever happened. The return to normalcy. The cosmic bureaucracy doesn't remove Jerry's powers with some impressive light show or dramatic cosmic event. Instead, they perform what looks like the most boring ritual possible. The lawn gnomes arrange themselves in a perfect circle around Jerry while floating forms materialize in the air. Jerry has to sign each form, initial various disclosure statements, and even provide a thumbprint made of cosmic energy. It's essentially a celestial DMV experience. Please sign here to acknowledge surrender of all godlike abilities, one gnome instructs in that same office worker voice. And here to confirm you understand that your pocket dimension will remain under probationary status for approximately 7.3 million years, after which time its status will be reviewed by the Department of Unauthorized Realities. Jerry signs each glowing document as it appears before him. With each signature, more of the cosmic energy drains from his body. The galaxies in his eyes gradually fade, replaced by his normal brown irises. His feet, which had been floating several inches above the ground, slowly lower until his shoes touch the grass. The process takes nearly an hour, with Rick growing increasingly impatient. Come on, we get it. Cosmic paperwork. Very funny metaphor for the bureaucracy of existence, Rick complains, but the gnomes ignore him completely. Finally, the last form is signed. The lawn gnomes return to their original positions as decorations, though Morty notices one of them winks at him before freezing back into ceramic stillness. The air molecules that had formed the floating documents disperse, and the tear in reality above the house that leads to Jerry's universe shrinks down to about the size of a beach ball before stabilizing. "Procedure complete," announces a disembodied voice from nowhere in particular. Jerry Smith is hereby returned to standard human status with the usual limitations and disappointing capabilities of his species. Jerry pats himself down, confirming he's fully solid again. "I feel normal. Kind of hungry, actually. Creating universes really works up an appetite." The family heads inside to assess the aftermath of Jerry's cosmic adventure. Most things have returned to their original state. The furniture no longer floats, the walls don't pulse with energy, and the living room has stopped randomly transforming into their honeymoon suite. But not everything is back to normal. In the kitchen, Beth discovers the breakfast dimension Jerry accidentally created hasn't disappeared completely. Instead, it's shrunk down to the size of a terrarium and now sits on the counter next to the toaster. Inside, tiny breakfast beings continue their little lives, building small structures out of toast and constructing a central temple around what appears to be a syrup bottle shaped vaguely like Jerry. "They're worshipping a syrup bottle that looks like you," Beth says, peering into the miniature world. Jerry leans in for a closer look. "Should we do something? They're so small now? Do they have enough food? Do they even need food if they're made of food?" Rick examines the breakfast terrarium with scientific curiosity. "They're stable. The cosmic bureaucracy must have decided it was easier to miniaturize them than erase them completely. Typical corner cutting. They'll evolve on their own timeline now, just on a much smaller scale." Morty discovers his own souvenir from Jerry's godhood when he steps into the backyard and hears the lawn gnomes whispering to each other. Not in the creepy cosmic bureaucracy way, but in small, conspiratorial voices. "The property values on this street are really declining with all those talking houses," one gnome murmurs to another. "You can hear them too, right?" Morty asks Rick, who shakes his head. "Another side effect," Rick explains. "You spent too much time around those gnomes when they were possessed by cosmic entities. Some of that perception stuck with you. Meanwhile, Summer checks her phone and finds she has thousands of new followers on social media, all from accounts with strange usernames like Jerryverse-Citizen42 and Simplicity Stan. Her latest posts have comments in a language that didn't exist a day ago, but that she somehow understands perfectly. "I have followers from Dad's universe," she announces, scrolling through her notifications. "They really like my content about how annoying this family is. Apparently, they find dysfunctional families exotic and fascinating." Jerry, now fully human again, moves through the house with a strange mix of relief and disappointment. He's glad the crisis is over, but there's a noticeable slump to his shoulders that wasn't there when he was floating with cosmic energy swirling around him. Beth notices this as she helps clean up the lingering messes from his godhood. She finds him in the living room, staring somewhat longingly at a family photo that had briefly been animated during his power surge, but is now just a regular picture again. "Do you miss it?" she asks. "Being a god?" Jerry sighs. "I miss being listened to. When I had those powers, even if I was messing everything up, at least people paid attention to what I was saying." Beth sits beside him on the couch, which no longer purrs when touched. "You know, Jerry, sometimes I see that potential in you, even without cosmic powers." "You do?" "When you're confident, when you're not trying so hard to prove yourself, like when you make Morty feel better after Rick's been particularly harsh, or when you helped Summer through her breakup last year." Beth puts her hand on his. You don't need galaxy eyes to have moments of wisdom. In the garage, Rick makes his own assessment of the aftermath. Most of his equipment has returned to normal, though a few devices still occasionally transform into singing birds that compliment Jerry before changing back. He's surprised to find the original cosmic power amplifier still intact, though now completely drained of energy. Morty joins him as he examines the device. Are you going to destroy that thing now? Rick considers this, then shakes his head. Actually, I'm kind of impressed with what Jerry managed to do with it. Don't get me wrong, it was chaotic, unprofessional, and nearly got us all erased from existence. But creating an entire universe, one that was stable enough that even the cosmic bureaucracy decided to let it exist. Rick almost looks proud. I didn't think Jerry had that kind of creativity in him. Later that weekend, Jerry decides to clean the garage again, the very task that started this whole adventure. He's much more careful this time, moving slowly around Rick's workbench. He notices something different. All of Rick's containers, devices, and equipment now have large labels on them. Some are written in alien languages, but the ones in English all say variations of the same message. Do not touch under any circumstances, especially you, Jerry. Jerry smiles slightly as he carefully dusts around these newly labeled items. The warnings are typical Rick, blunt, a little insulting. But there's something else there too. For Rick to take the time to label everything specifically, for Jerry, means he acknowledges Jerry's presence in his workspace. It's not exactly respect, but it's something. Through the small window in the garage, Jerry can see the miniature rift to his universe, still floating above the house like a strange decoration. It's contained now, stable, just a small window into a world where things make sense the way Jerry thinks they should. Where simplicity isn't stupidity, where straightforwardness isn't naivety, where Jerry Smith isn't a cosmic joke, but someone worth listening to. Conclusion. The Smith family sits around the dinner table that night, the miniature breakfast dimension terrarium serving as their centerpiece, its tiny syrup bottle-shaped Jerry monument glowing softly. Beth passes around plates, while Summer documents the tiny civilization for her interdimensional followers. You know, Rick says, poking at his food, your universe might actually survive and evolve. It's structurally sound, despite being built on Jerry logic. Possibly the most permanent thing you've ever created. After dinner, Jerry sits alone with the terrarium, leaning close to the glass as the breakfast beings gather to listen. Remember to keep things simple, he whispers. Sometimes that's all you need.